Hi, folks. Laura Wilson here with Heidi Potter. Welcome you to week number 2 of the Horse Speak Fundamentals webinar series. We're so happy to have you all with us. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your personal life to come and learn more about Horse Speak. Sharon is very excited about what she has to present to you all this evening. And we are too, because we're constantly learning. This Horse Speak is an evolution. We have folks that have come from our previous webinar series to come back again and see what else we have, because some of the things have changed just a tad. So there's always time to learn more about Horse Speak. And the thing that I personally enjoy about what I've learned, because we have 6 horses, is how to maneuver the bubble of personal space. Because we do have 4 horses that are loose and they do run up to where we feed them in the morning. And it's really important for me to make sure that I keep my hands up so that they don't plow into me when they get excited about their food. So as you go on in the webinar series, Sharon's going to go into the precision on how to help you learn those types of techniques so that when you are out with a herd or taking a horse out of the stall, you're able to define your personal space so that everyone can remain safe. And Heidi's going to go over a couple things with you, and Sharon's going to be on with you in just a few moments.
Hi, guys. Good to have you back with us. And for those of you that are joining us for a second round, thank you. I hope you're enjoying some of the updates and changes we've made. This webinar that you have here, you're actually going to get into the greeting part of the Horse Speak. So it's going to start off with the history of the horses and why horses are afraid. Sharon's got some great insights to share with you about that. And then you're going to move from there through the bubbles of personal space into the actual greetings. So lots to look forward to. It's going to take you to the next level, and I'm so glad you're on the journey with us. So enjoy the episode.
All right, we're going to switch places, and Sharon will be right with you, folks.
Hello, everybody. So let's start with remembering what we talked about last week. And so I did tell you a little bit of my journey, and if you've read Horses in Translation, I talk a lot more about it there. And we also talked about bridging the gap, and that's the concept of helping us get from where we are with our perceptions and what we're looking for in the relationship with a horse, and where the horse is on the other side of that gap, and trying to kind of build a bridge to meet in the middle with them. We talked about the 4 F's, and that is the fight and flight, and freeze and flock. And so just thinking about the 4 F's and what kind of F does your horse tend to go into, and what kind of F do you tend to go into? So knowing that can give you a leg up on, being able to work with keeping your 0, which is the next thing we talked about, and we will continue to talk about. So a lot of people say to me, hey, Sharon, I really want to be 0 with my horse, but I'm trying so hard to be 0, and I'm having a hard time really staying there. So maybe they listen to some music in the car on the way over, and they're 0 for a little while, and then some things happen and boom, they lose their 0. So I'm always trying to come up with simple ways to start to aim your own parasympathetic nervous system back to that experience. And because most of us, if we start thinking about being 0, now we're thinking about being 0, and am I 0 enough? Or if I'm not 0, is my horse not going to like me? Or is my horse 0? Or and you're definitely not 0. So we talked about this, just putting the fingers together, palms up in your lap. And this has a significant effect on bringing your internal intensity levels lower. There's some other interesting things you can try. There's, for instance, looking with your eyes to the left and just breathing deeply for a few moments. It tells some parts of your nervous system to relax, and then you can also look to the right. And you can see which side is more effective for you. Just looking one way for a few moments, taking a few deep breaths, and just noticing, that did make me feel calmer on the inside. Because it's not so much about having our head necessarily always in the right space, but being able to get some awareness of what breathing pattern am I in, and how calm is my heart rate. So that's really what we're trying to pay attention to, is just a calm breathing pattern and a calm heart rate. And that's something that can take time to build up, but sometimes the biofeedback that the horse is giving us, the more we're in zero, the more they look and feel like a zero too. And what's nice about this is that horses eventually do find their zero, or they get back to their zero, or they get a deeper level of zero. And once they have it, they don't want to lose it. So if you show up and you're, a little, not really zero today, at that stage, the horse can look at you and say, you know what, Mom, let's do some deep breathing. And I've really had horses actually look at their owner and then start to go, or drop their head, or, give them, kind of pull them in for a hug, or all kinds of interesting things have happened, because they want for their terms, they want the whole herd to be in a relaxed state in order for well-being. And it's just a function of horse herds that needs to happen. So if you're part of their herd and you've been aiming at zero with them, and then you're not for that one moment, they can actually help you. So that's part of why it's so important to start with. So looking versus seeing. And what we talked about was when you're looking at a horse, you're really in the mindset of how beautiful they look, or with the paintings, or the image of a horse, and they look all beautiful. However, that's the last thing that you want to see on the end of your lead rope. You don't want a rearing, bucking horse right next to you. So part of what we have to transform is that we like to look at things that feel beautiful and balanced and harmonious, and horses are all that. And what we have to transform into seeing is being able to switch into a perception that is there for the horse. So we're not so objectifying what we're looking at. Oh, look at that color, I like that color. Or look at that movement, I like that movement. And instead we're seeing, well, what is the horse expressing? What do their eyes look like? And are they breathing? And did they put their head down and then up again? And so when you start to change from looking to seeing, it means that you're going into a deeper level of rapport from your side to their side. We also talked about mirroring and how that can help bring about rapport. And horses and people and mammals in general do a lot of mirroring when they're babies, and that's part of how we learn what the social dynamics are for our species. And what's really interesting to me as I go on this journey is that surprisingly, horses and people have a lot of similarities in their social structures. So I think that might be part of why we like each other and get along. But what I wanted to say is that if your horse is really tense or fearful or even a little aggressive, you don't want to mirror that kind of energy back to the horse. If you're mirroring a horse who has those kinds of issues, you're doing it for your own purposes. So you're not trying to get in harmony with a horse who's tense by looking tense. It's more that you're looking at your horse and saying, I'm trying to see. And so I'm letting myself kind of absorb these micro movements that my horse is doing for the purposes of learning my horse's feel and their timing and their rhythm and what's predictable and what's not, and things like that. A lot of times when we do have tense horses, we don't notice all the more subtle things until it's too late. So that would be the purpose of mirroring there. And for our own purposes of being a mentor towards our horses, then we really want to model after the quiet horses who are good mentors. So that's how we want our postures and our breath pattern and the kind of rhythmic movements that we want to signal to any horse. We want to look like these quiet types. Bubbles of personal space, we talked a little bit about that last week, and this week is all about it. And then the hold position, and this week we'll talk a lot more about using your hand in a hold pattern. So week 2, let's talk a little bit about why are horses so scared? What is it why do they tend to be so timid? They're such big animals. And I meet a lot of people, I travel a lot, and it's surprising how many people will come and say to me, I don't get it. we've gone up and down this barn aisle 100 times and he's still nervous. Why is he so nervous about it? So we're going to look into some of those reasons that we can understand, which brings us to the history of horses. You know, kind of where do they come from and what's in their genetic makeup a little bit. We're going to go deeper into the bubbles of personal space, and we're going to talk about some of the roles in the herds, like protectors, map makers, also sentry, and the horses that do the hold position and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit about the approaching and greeting aspects. So how do you approach and how do you initiate the greeting ritual? And then a couple of concepts about how horses move around and with each other. And one is called making a sandwich, and that's front to back connection. And the other is pieces of a pie, and that's side to side connection. So at the end, we're going to talk about spiraling into the bubble and why is it important at this stage to really do as much of your observation from the other side of a fence or barrier of some kind, just because you can keep your zero better. Okay, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end. So I just wanted to reiterate that horse speak comes from horses. And this is because I was able to work with at a college for students that had some learning disabilities. And that was a huge privilege, and just what a fantastic experience. What an amazing group of students and people. And they asked great questions. So they took nothing for granted. And they, you know, if I said, well, this is happening, they said, why? How do you know that's happening? Prove that it's happening. You know, so it was fantastic because they were always, you know, asking me these wonderful questions. And I had to really study more and dig deeper. And that's part of why I took time off to go learn about horses from horses. And the other side of it is I got to do a lot of rehabilitation work and work at rescues, or even in some of the riding programs I was involved in. There's always a few rescue type horses that come into those programs. And there's always just sort of the day-to-day problem solving of, you know, if you have a lot of horses in a barn and you have a big program, there's a lot going on. So I really dedicated this horse speak material to as much of how horses help other horses. So there's a lot, it talks about using the idea of horse body language for training, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is really about using horse body language as it pertains to how horses keep the peace, maintain harmony, communicate all their needs and wants and thoughts and desires, and try to do it from a quiet place. Horse speak uses the language of the horse to build rapport and the desire to follow us. And this is a different concept, because horse speak inherently is presenting your body language to a horse in a way that mimics their body language, postures, gestures, intensity levels, breath messages, eye blinking messages, all these different nuances that is similar enough so that they recognize the signals that they would be giving each other. Now, as I said before, I have hands, a horse doesn't. I have a really short face and neck. They have a really long face and neck. There's some big differences in our bodies. However, and this is the cool part, there is a way for us to use the signals, the gestures, the postures, the intention, the angles, the breathing, that is so close enough for them that they, after doing it for a couple of minutes, they go, I know what you're trying to say. And you're trying to say it to me instead of giving me a set of rules that I have to follow to understand you. So we are learning how to initiate, build, and then rely upon rapport in a same way or similar way as horses do. Okay, so when they come together, there's a very specific way that they come in and greet. There's a specific way that they negotiate personal space. That's pretty quiet. There can be a squeal from time to time, but generally they're, especially horses who know each other and they're coming to the field for the first time, they just are like, hey, how are you this morning? Okay, we're going to have space. Okay, on to the next thing. And it's done. So what's great about that for us is that we can take advantage of the fact that they like to have a low calorie, quiet way to sort of say, hey, Bob, how's your day? I'm going to go over here. Okay. You know, did you want to follow, or you want to hang out with me, or you can do your own thing? And just as we would have a simple, easy way to start our day at work, you don't generally go into your job and say, all of you sit down in your desks. I'm not going to walk down that aisle unless we're just, hey, good morning. There's a nice, polite way that we have to have daily social interaction, and they do too. So once we get that basic sense of it, it becomes very easy, very quickly, to have a nice daily social interaction with horses, and that's building the rapport. So in contrast, training really does come from people. It's about us and our ideas of what's fun. Whether you have a purpose for it, like if you are moving cattle, or you're practicing trail riding, or it's just for fun, and the Roman riding down below is just this exciting thing to do. It's still, us as human beings saying, I've got an idea, let's do this, or let's do that. And hey, horse, I want you to help me, get this job done, or do this thing, or I just want to have fun with you. And they can do that. And some horses are even really interested in that and have a good time with us too. But it's still our idea. And so then anything we're doing along the lines of training is behavior modification, because we're saying, well, these are the behaviors I want, and those behaviors, I don't want those. And I want you to do these. And I'm going to tell you even more and more and more nuances to how I want you to do these. But horse speak is about starting from the ability to communicate to the horse in a similar language with them. Hey, hi, let's get to know each other. Let's have connect and respect, and let's make sure we feel good about this connection. And now I can insert some education. So like if I was teaching at a school, I might say hello to my students before I just walk in and write some stuff on the board and start teaching, because it's more social. So how can we have both good rapport and fun training ideas? And that's really what the bottom line is. So whatever we have in our agenda for our training and for what we're looking for, it could just be, I want to go on a trail ride, or it could just be, I want to put this horse on a halter and lead it outside to the pen and not have it trample me in the morning. There's the levels can adjust depending on what our needs are. But if you have the ability to build rapport, sustain it, you can then rely on it, and the horse can rely on it too. And this is the cool thing, is that horses don't want to be stressed out. They don't want to run you over. They don't want to feel fear. They don't want to run through the gates. They don't like that either. So when we know how to say to them in their communication system, hey, it's okay, you can trust me, I've got you, I'm not going to let anything hurt you or happen to you, then it's very easy for them to go, okay, then I'll just move about my day at my zero while I'm with you, because that's not a big deal to them. So rapport building, why do horses need so much reassurance? And this is something that's come up again and again, and we do need to do things like blow sentry. We'll talk about blowing sentry today, but we need to blow a sentry, scan the horizon, secure the environment. That's like checking. That's like making a checklist of what's going on here in this environment. How is that tree bothering you, or what about that fence post? And this is the way horses will do it. If you turn horses loose in a new environment, one of them at least will go around and kind of sniff all the things and look and kind of check everything out. And the other horses are watching, because if that horse says, oh, this is nerve-wracking, then all the horses know. So that way you don't have 20 horses making up their mind about what they're going to do. You have one significant horse doing it. So I want to be that horse. I want to be the horse that's saying, I've checked all the things and I've decided it's all fine. Okay, because that's easy then for the horse to say, well, then I'll just get behind you and follow you, because you know how to check things out. So one of the reasons that horses have so much tendency to get tense, to get fearful, to have thresholds that don't make any sense to us, is because they're really only a few generations away from returning to their roots. And as soon as, some horses become feral, or like in America, we have a lot of Mustangs, they start to go back towards the origin state. Like these Przewalski horses here are still in the origin state because they're a completely undomesticated branch of Equus. So what these Przewalski horses look like is what most horses start to become more like. They become dun colored, either gold or silver dun colored, and they get shorter and stockier and bigger heads and bigger bellies and shorter legs, and they just become very efficient and kind of compact, and they can turn on a dime. They got big feet, but nature says this is a good design. This design is more likely to survive. So no matter whether we have small horses or big horses, if they're completely feral for a long enough period of time, they tend to revert back to this state. Early domestic horses also were really not that big. So, for a long time, you can see like old reliefs and old statues and hieroglyphs and things like that were depicting the use of horses, but they're quite small, actually. Even Alexander the Great's horse was depicted as being pretty little. So we didn't really develop the larger breeds until as a culture, as a society, we needed them for things. And that's more in the cold bloods and the colder regions of the world. So for instance, here we still have minis, and we have some Belgians, we have some big horses, but in both of these cases, these are breeds that we've selected certain genetic traits, and depending on what we're looking for. So we want a horse that can pull more weight, so we breed them bigger. We want a horse that is more of a child's horse that can pull a little cart and be pretty containable. So there's a mini. So, and everything in between. For whatever the need was for that region and that group of people, we selected traits, and then we bred those traits in to create what we were looking for to fulfill the needs we had. However, if we go all the way back, the earliest recording of horses is called Eohippus, and they actually had paws, and they were tiny. They were just about the size of a big cat. And at that time in history, there were these giant, they call them terror birds, because that would be terrifying to me. They were huge, and they were like big hawks or eagles. They were flightless, but they ran around and they ate everything. And there was also a lot of big predators, saber-toothed tigers and things like that. Little Eohippus was this tiny creature that really was food for everything. And as time went on, they evolved, and there's different stages of evolution. It's a great thing to look up. It's really fun to go to a museum, or you could just look it up online, but it's a fascinating story of evolution and how those toes receded and the little changes that happened as they grew. But inside a horse's nervous system, there's still this pattern that says, I'm meat on feet, and I need to watch out for everything, especially things that flap, because once upon a time there were these big birds, and even the ones that weren't grounded, there were big eagles, or all kinds of things. So flapping energy, flapping noises, a paper bag or rustling in the trees can really freak a horse out, because somewhere deep, deep, deep in the back of their brain, there's still this reflex of fluttering could be really bad for me. So when we think about horses being afraid of something that we think is silly, to their brain, this ancient brain pattern, it's not. Like if there's a threshold, the barn door, want to go from the concrete inside of the barn to the graveled outside of the barn, well, that's a change. Well, in nature, where do predators like to hang out? They like to hang out at the edges of things, right? They lie in wait at the water hole. So wherever there's a significant change in the landscape, it could be a little bit dangerous. So they don't know why they're afraid of the shadow, but their brain has this reflex and they can't really get rid of it. So just understand that a little bit. So it's really natural for horses to still be quite skeptical, even though they're obviously a lot bigger than little Eohippus, but they still have this need to test things out and to look at things and to go slow and to really make up their mind about a person, place, or thing, or an activity. So there's a lot of, wonderful tips and tricks that have come along that is desensitizing or making a game out of it, and trying to introduce horses to things that normally would scare them. And it's a good idea to approach and retreat and just practice with horses, working through their fears instead of getting frustrated with them. So to recap, Horse Speak is from horses. It is by, for, and about horses. It's our interpretation of their language. Training is from people. And so even training that involves some of basic horse body language, there's still a goal. I want the horse to do these behaviors for me. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's just to understand that there is a distinction. Okay. Why are horses so scared? They're scared because there's a deep, deep, deep plant in the back of their brain that says they need to be scared because they need to stay alive. And we went over the brief history of horses, which I highly recommend anyone who's interested in that, go look it up because it's a fascinating story of evolution. So we're going to talk a little bit about the bubbles of personal space. We're going to go a little deeper into that. So approaching, greeting, and how herds organize. So those are the three main ideas that we're going to start to work with. Now, if you remember, we talked a little bit about the bubbles going around the horses, and that there's one direct connect through the horse from front to back, also from back to front. And there's another connect through the horse at the girth line this way. So they're aware of what's in front and behind. Those are significant points. And they're in side to side. Those are significant points. And then the whole bubble is significant, but just as for our purposes to start making sense of it. So then I call those the 4 quadrants in the bubble. So you'll hear me refer to that. So approaching, all right, if we just walk straight up to a horse, especially at an angle, so especially if we're coming in at an angle, we're walking straight to the shoulder, or we're coming in from behind and we're walking, straight past them to their face. To them, we just cut through those quadrants. We just pop the bubble and walked right through. Okay. So when they're approaching each other, they come in face to face because that's acceptable. This is a place where the bubbles can meet and touch and greet and have a little greeting moment and get ready to intersect those bubbles or bounce off those bubbles or do whatever they're going to do next. So for us, when we are coming to a horse for the first time or to go get them from the field, if it's possible, the best approach is from the front, but you want to look at how these horses are approaching each other with low heads. So if we walk in like this, that is going to be a push to push them away. If we can just, this is where the 0 comes in. Can we relax? Can we stop? If the horse, looks away for a moment, they may be like, they're giving you a little space in that quadrant, but they may also be saying, oh, it's a little intense. Okay. So just approach and pause and approach and pause. Approach in a way that really shows that you're at your 0. You may also come in through the bubble, like you might come through towards the shoulder. Some horses are okay with that, but still you want to approach in a quiet, peaceful way that says, I don't mean you any harm. You want to think a little bit about when we are doing a handshake with a person. Now there's different ways of greeting all around the world, but handshaking is a pretty common one. So when we come in to shake hands, there's a lean in and there's a handshake, and then we lean out and then we say some words. So I might lean in and say, hi, my name is Sharon Wilsey. Who are you? And then you say, oh, I'm Erin Smith. And oh, okay, that's nice. And then, well, what are you doing here? And la la la. And then, well, what are you doing? Well, who am I? Where am I from? And so we'll use language then to finish the conversation. But if you're a horse, you come in and you do an initial greeting. And then when you step away, you will come in again for another one. And then you'll step away. And if the horse is ready, then you'll come in again for a third one. And the third one is now the connection point. And the reason for that is that they only have body language to communicate with, and we have verbal language. So we can finish the conversation by blah, 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 and saying our things. Horses need to do it physically, okay? So when we come in to greet a horse, I like to teach people to come to the front and be able to drop in a lower, pleasant expression. So you're making eye contact. I want to make sure that that's included here. So you're not staring, okay? You're not staring at them, but you're smiling, and this does not look like teeth. It doesn't look, I suppose if you do this, it looks kind of crazy, but if you're just smiling, and when we smile, we tend to breathe, and our face flushes a little bit, and we tend to bobble our heads a little. There's a lot of other little movements that we make when we smile and we feel happy, and they recognize that all, and it's all like a whole expression, okay? So you want to smile, you want to have a pleasant expression, make soft eye contact, just like you would if you were greeting a new person. If you greet someone like this, nice to meet you, it's not very welcoming. So you don't want to greet your horse like this either. You want to come in and, hi, nice to meet you. Very good. And then step back. So the next step after 3 touches, and that can be done quickly. Some horses are quick. You get in and they go on your knuckle, they go 1, 2, 3. They did it. Some come in 1 and 2 and 3. And then they might even kiss you a little bit. Nice to meet you. Okay. After you've done that, what horses do demonstrate is what's called a go-away face. And that just means that they clear out one side or the other of the quadrant for you. So if a horse looks at you and sort of breathes, that's a greeting breath, okay? And some horses are really sensitive about their mouth, so they may not want you to actually touch their muzzle, and that's okay. They can look towards you and just with their nostrils, and it's soft, and that's a greeting breath, okay? And the next thing they may do is this. And if they do that, that's great, because it says, I respect you. Okay, so this is connect, and this is respect, and it's that simple. All right. And you watch horses and you'll see them do it. So maybe they did a fast breath and touch. They went really fast, and then they did respect. Or they did slow and they paused between, and then the third one, and then they did a really dramatic one. So you'll see these different rhythms and speeds depending on temperament and who's who and who's higher in the pecking order. There's a lot of reasons that it can be sped up or slowed down, but the basics are still going to be there. And when a horse does yield their face to you, what you can do is just a little tiny movement like that yourself to say, thanks, because that's what a horse would do. So if this horse says, I yield the space to you, I respect you, this horse will say, good job, thank you. And then they go about their business, okay? So at a certain point, before I go in a stall, before I go deeper into the rapport with the horse, I'm also going to reach over and I'm going to initiate a go-away face. I'm going to do that from the side of the horse, not from the front. You see in the picture, I'm at the side, okay? And to ask the face to move, you use your fingertip pressure, like a horse would use their eyes, the ears might be back, they might use a little mouth intensity, okay? So this pointy, okay? So you gotta look a little pointy. So that's go away face. This is not stab away face or flap away face or go, shake it away. It's not none of that stuff. It's just go, just touch, just like that. And what you'll see horses do is, okay, like that. Now, if you have a horse who's confused or they're immature or they've had some issues with their face, they're head shy, they might push into you a little bit to say, do you really mean it? Because they're asking a question. You might see some horse go, oh, you're going to hit me. You might see different reactions to that, but that's why you stay 0. Whatever they give you, you just say, no, really, it's just that. That's really, and if the horse is so sensitive, they're like, don't touch me there, then you can do this with your finger. And this is funny. It's a very funny thing, but I've done this to horses. And they go, whoa, that's pointy. I'll move my face. Okay. So there's different ways to initiate that, but why you're doing it is because it's low calorie, it's easy, and it's how horses start to do the journey of hierarchy that is low calorie. Okay, it's quiet. They consider it respectful. So when you behave that way towards them, in their mind, they're already going, "Hmm, this person really knows what they're talking about." Okay, it gets their interest. And they may be insecure, or they may be young, or they maybe are immature. And so there could be a number of reasons why they ask you a couple of times or 10 times or 20 times, do the go away face, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And that's okay too. So if you feel that you have a horse who's, 4 years old and he's very immature and he's kind of boing, 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 and you find you're doing a lot of these, that's okay. It will simmer down as he gets to the stage where he's like, oh, every time. Oh, every time it's a go. Oh, okay. And the reason is horses have to define this part of their quadrant before they move past it to talk to the other buttons or to get into one of the other G's. So there's greeting, going somewhere, grooming, the fourth one is gone. Okay. So the grooming phase, the true grooming ritual, we'll talk about later more, but that only happens after the going somewhere ritual is really satisfied. Okay. And part of satisfying that ritual is doing go away face. So that's why it's so important. Defining those front quadrants is big in horse talk because they need to know where they're putting those necks and where they're putting those faces and who is up and who is down. This is a lot of room to take up if you're a horse. Having a long neck and head, you can see just by my arms simulating it. Okay, so having this be the beginning of the conversation is part of figuring out how they're going to work with each other's bubbles. Because when they're in conflict, what they want to do is bite there and drive the other horse away. So they're only going to really bite that spot if it's a conflict. Okay, and you may see two rowdy horses that are playing and one gets a little bit too much and he nips at it. And usually the other one will be like, game's over. I don't want to do that. Okay. But if horses are really battling for territory or for over mares or whatever, they're going to aim here as one of the buttons of battle. So now we're going to think a little bit about how they move their bubbles in relation to each other to keep peace and harmony in the herd. Okay. So sandwiching is a really interesting thing to think about. When horses are what I call sandwiching, it's basically that they're forming a line. There's one in front, there's one in back, and there's one in the middle. Now, in the case of 100 horses, there's one in front, there's one way in the back, and everybody else is in the middle. But in that sandwich, every horse has their position, and one horse in behind the behind horse is either following the horse in front of it, like, a baby following its mama, or a lower nervous horse following a horse that's more confident and bold. And one horse is in the leader position where they're saying, I know where we're going. Okay. So sandwiching is all about the horse in the middle of the sandwich is the most secure horse, meaning they are protected from the back and being led from the front. They don't have to worry. They don't have to think, they just go. So horses getting sandwiched make up most of our horses, because most of the horses want to be in the middle. They don't want to decide where they're going, and they don't want to have to kick the coyotes if they show up. They just want to be protected and just get where they're going to. Okay, so real leaders who think about where are we going, and real leaders who think about how am I going to protect you, are few and far between. So we're going to think a little bit about the protector position. And the hold energy comes in to the protectors the most. So when a horse is in a hold posture, that's like my horse Rocky here up to the left. He's standing there, he goes to this hill and he stands on that hill. And he does that. And he stares at nothing really, but he just stares up. And the mares, when they see him doing that, they all blow their breath out. And maybe they'll lay down, they roll, because he's in the hold position. What he's saying is, I'm scanning the horizon. It's not as intense as a sentry. He doesn't have to breathe, blow away boogeyman. He's just saying, I've got it. Hold on, ladies. I've got it. I'm watching out for everything. I'm in the readiness posture. I'm ready for anything, but I'm not on high alert. See, my head is low, my face is relaxed. So there's no alert here, but I'm having this hold position mean that I've got everything covered, okay? So I don't have a head and neck like that. I can't square up my shoulders quite the way he does, but I can do this with the palm. A minute ago, I talked about this being a driving force, having your fingertip pressure. And the opposite of that is your palm being a connecting force. So when horses want to offer connection, they'll offer a flat surface, like the side of the face, the side of the forehead, like the big flat surface of the forehead, side of a shoulder, maybe even the side of their belly or their butt. So when they're offering a big, wide, flat surface, it's like, I want to connect with you. And they can use their muzzle also, and they can use other things. But for this idea, just think that if it's a connection point, it's soft and it's flat. So when you use your palm to connect with the horse, right, one of the things we do with our palm is petting. So if you have a mixed message by using your palm to push a horse, and sometimes using your palm to pet a horse, that's confusing to them. And also, if you push into a horse with your palm, the force that you're using to push in, when you take that away, has sort of a bounce back effect, and you'll find the horses come back. So using fingertip pressure does not have a bounce back effect. There's a feeling that you should move off of it. So this is just to bring some clarity to it. So if I'm in the hold position for my horse with my palm and I'm not touching them, I'm just in the air, I'm being like Rocky. I'm saying, I've got it. I'm watching out. You don't have to move. You don't have to worry. I'm watching. I can even do two hands. And it's relaxed shoulders, relaxed elbows. I'm not stay away. It's not that. It's relaxed face, zero energy. And I used to call this, in one of my books, I call this X light. Okay. So you can think of that also. It's like a mini X. But this is just, I've got you. You don't have to do anything. And just stay right where you are. Okay. And it's an important position for a lot of reasons. So in these two pictures, you can see the horse in the back and that are walking together. That horse is now in the hold position towards the hind of the horse in front of it. Okay. So that horse in the back is now in the hold posture, medium neck. The face is concentrating ears, but basically a relaxed face. And they're walking in harmony with the hind quarter of the horse in front. The horse in front is dropping their nose, relaxing and lowering the intensity. Okay. So why is this important? It's important because the one in the back is saying, you don't have to worry. You don't have to be defensive. I've got your back. Okay. I've got it. And in the picture above, this horse is moving around me and I'm doing the same posture. I'm not doing anything. I'm allowing the horse to move and I'm just saying, I've got you. And I had started at the shoulder and the horse moved off and allowed me to include that in all their buttons. And all I had to do was stand there and they moved all their buttons under my hand. Okay. And you can see there's a low head. The tail is moving. It's a comfortable movement of the tail. That's thinking and processing. Okay. The horse has comfortable movements in their feet. The ears are relaxed. The face is relaxed. So I've got your back. Don't worry about it. It's a really powerful message. When we're starting to learn this, it's most important to do this over a barrier. Okay. Because you may not know yet what your hold posture really is supposed to feel like. And so it's really important to be observing horses and look for the one who's in the hold. They're quiet, they're concentrating, heavy, relaxed steps. They're not in a rush. They're not biting and driving the horse in front of them. They're just, I've got you, okay? And for us to practice that over a fence is fantastic. And even if the horse is 50 feet away, I kid you not, if you stand at the fence line, aim this towards them, especially towards the rear end, and take a big breath. And in your mind, you're saying, I've got your back. I wouldn't let anything hurt you. That message goes into your micro movements when you think about it. And horses respond to it. So the other side of the sandwich is the map makers. And the map maker not only is better at determining if something is really dangerous up ahead, is that shadow actually going to get us, or get me and my herd, or is it just a shadow? So they're good at making those quick decisions. They also are better at knowing and remembering where things are and even where side paths are to get somewhere. So you don't want, in a horse herd, they don't want 20 horses making up their mind, well, we're all meeting the valley, that's crazy, and anyone could stumble and fall and get hurt or get picked off by a predator. So they're bet safety in numbers. So the map maker is the one who says, okay, we are going to meet in the valley, but you're going to stay behind me, and you're not going to go as fast as you'd like to go. A lot of times you'll see the horses in the back like, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. And the map maker and the friend's like, no, we're going to slow down. We could trot, but it's going to be relaxed. And they don't let the horses just amp up and take off, okay? Because they're trying to get everyone there in one piece. So in the front of a trail ride, like the one you see down below, map makers are the best lead horses for a trail ride because they have their ears relaxed, they're concentrating, they're confident about where they're going, but they also give an air of confidence to all the horses in the back. And I used to do some trail riding as a guide, and for sure the horse that I picked to ride in the front made a big difference on how the rest of the herd came up behind me with all my riders. So if I picked a horse who was a little bit too energetic, it didn't work out as good for who was coming up behind. If I picked a horse that was really solid and steady, that was going to be a great trail ride. Again, we're going to bring up the sentry breath and the sentry horse. So a horse who is doing sentry, it could be a map maker, it could be a protector, it could be his own person. He could be the sentry. I have a horse who, that's pretty much her only role is sentry. She doesn't get bothered by anything. And so if she does come up like this and go towards the woods, everybody pays attention to her. If she says, we should go, they all take off. I have another horse who is not a sentry. She's a joker, but she wishes she was. And so she's going, what's that? What's that? What's that? Because she would like to keep things going and have some fun and invent issues. So often the one who is blowing a lot of sentry is really insecure. They're not necessarily the sentry. You can have some stoic horses who blow a lot of sentry because they've gotten to that state where they're having a lack of trust or a lack of rapport. But most of the time, horses who blow a lot of sentry are not secure. So the ones who almost never blow sentry are the ones that they really listen to and believe, because that's the horse who's steady Eddie, okay? So the first part of blowing sentry for your horse is to look at what they look at, which means seeing, not looking. Because if you're looking at your horse, what are you looking at? Instead of turning and looking, and you just understand that at one point they were these tiny little creatures and there's monsters and boogeymen everywhere in the back of their brain. So if they look down the aisle and you see nothing and they do, just blow sentry at it. I see that boogeyman down there. And the next step is to look like the mentor, not the joker. So you don't want to blow and die. You want to blow sentry at the thing, and then we're fine. Now, because we are moving in on something that is very natural for horses to do with each other, and they really understand it, but we're learning it. A horse might ask us to blow sentry for them like 20 times in a row, and that's fine, okay? At every threshold, the stall door and the aisle and the gate to the riding ring and. That's fine. Because what the horse is saying is, really? Are you gonna keep this up? Do you really mean it? Or is this like a passing fancy? So they're gonna really ask you, oh, what about that? What about that? What about that? And that's great, because the more they ask you now, the less they'll ask you later. So the idea of blowing sentry for your horse is that you then also let it go. So what's that? Don't worry about it. That's nothing. I've got it. So you can say that by going, when you smack your lips, it's what horses do when they release that adrenaline, okay? They release the adrenaline, they get back into the state of being able to chew. So when you make that sound, a lot of times they'll even stop looking and they'll look at you and go, oh, ready to chew again? Oh, good idea. So you need to have the down phase of this entry breath. And the beauty of it is that horses who are really insecure gain so much security from you saying, I'll be your sentry, I'll watch out for boogeymen. And horses who are more secure, but maybe just have like a spooky corner, or, you know, every now and then just are like, yeah, I would like someone to have my back a little bit. You know, they're like, wow, thanks for doing that for me. Over time, the idea is that they don't need this as much, and maybe even at all. The horses that I do this with, in my own horses, my horses don't ask me for sentry at all, unless there actually is a bear in them. You know, bears woke up recently. It's early spring, and there was a bear in the woods. So I came out of the house. I heard them all running, and I came out and I blew sentry at the woods. And they believed me. I haven't had to do that for 6 months. So this is something just to work in to the overall talking to your horses. So the idea here is that we're moving into becoming an anchor for our horse. So we want to be able to map what's going on ahead. Want to be able to hold from behind. I've got you. I'm a protector. I won't let anything bite you or come up and get you. And I want to blow sentry and say, there's boogeymen, but I've got it. I'm not going to let the boogeyman get you either. Okay. So you want to respect that that horse feels like a very small animal, and that they prefer, most horses, 90% of horses prefer to be in the middle of the herd. Okay. Every now and then you really do have a map maker, you really do have a sentry, or you really do have a mentor or a protector. And that's great. So even for those horses, offering to stand in gives them a break and says, you don't have to carry all the emotional burden. I'll share it with you. And those horses are like, that's great. You know, it's great to have someone to share this with. So becoming those things for your horse is stepping into understanding the horse wants to be sandwiched. They want someone to follow. They also want someone behind who's going to protect them. So the hold hand from behind is a safe, easy way to begin giving that signal from a distance. Do not go up to a horse you don't know, or a horse that you're struggling with, and just put your hand on their rump and go, I've got your back. They're not going to understand what you're talking about. You could get hurt. I don't want that to happen. Well, from a distance, you can place your hand and embody, I've got your back. And I have seen this do amazing things. So hold it for a full minute and watch. Does your horse drop their head? Do they blink? Do they lick and chew? Do they square up? Do they sort of drop into themselves? Okay. And from the front, blowing sentry, that's part of the map making thing, because what's going on over there? You can secure the environment a little bit by walking up and down the aisle in front of them in their stall, or around an arena, or around a paddock. And you can kick the boards or check the fencing. Anyone who's ever gone out and fixed fencing in a field where there's horses, you know, has told me, a lot of people have come and told me, it's true. When I'm fixing fencing, I turn and look back and there's a whole bunch of horses behind me. What is he doing? And that's because when a horse is securing the environment for another horse, they go around and sniff all the things. It's really important for horses to know the environment is not going to hurt us. Okay. So there's some simple ways to start playing these roles for the sandwich that your horse is hoping to be in. We don't want to look like a competitor in the hierarchy. We want to look like a leader and have our zero. Okay, so in this situation, I've already done the greeting with 2 horses. And now I've gone to, I was talking about that fingertip thing. So I've just put both my fingers in the air. I call this like teacher mode or librarian mode. And the horses are on the other side of my hands. And this is not something that I've trained. This is not something that I have to teach them to do. They already understand it. I just needed to get into my X light posture, get into my hold posture, and mean it. And I know that I mean it because I know that horses feel secure when I can hold the space in this way. So thinking about the bubble, remember, I talked about this before, when you bring your hands together, in fact, try it. This is a really fun thing to try. And you feel like this weird magnetism right about here. So that's how it feels for them on the edge of their bubble. It's like a palpable sensation. They can feel that weird little magnetic thing where the edge is. So when I say, hey, you know what? I have a bubble and it's right here. You have a bubble and it's right there. Let's not cross lines yet. Let's just be really clear and practice where our bubbles are. That's what horses want from each other. So when you give that to them and you initiate it, you look like a leader. When you initiate it and you're at 0, so you can hold your space and hold their space too and be calm, then you look like a really amazing leader. Okay? So it's just greeting, and then go away face is a great way to just start the conversation, because you're saying, let's not invade each other. Let's have respect. Let's have connect, and let's have respect. And that way we're all in a better place to really have a conversation. A lot of us like to get into bigger intensity levels. And a lot of us have even been taught to do big intensity things, like you've got to lunge your horse if you want to get anything done, or you need to put them in a round pen, or they've got to trot for 20 minutes before they relax. Certainly helping your horse get tired or kind of run off some initial adrenaline can help them to shift gears into a different state of mind. However, if you don't have an established 0 inside yourself and inside your horse, then there's no place for the two of you to really come back to and work from. So if you're going to initiate what I call all the way up to level 4 intensity, okay, that's like the big stuff, you really want to have a 0 on the inside. So that intensity is just something that we're doing, not we've gotten, stirred up and worked up, and I've gotten emotional, or the horse has gotten emotional, or whatever. So when in the bottom picture we see the horse in the hug position with me, that is a beautiful thing. It feels really nice, but even that can be like a level 4 intensity, because the horse is literally wrapped around me in my bubble. Our bubbles are completely connected. Okay. And that's the true grooming ritual, when it's wonderful and the horse desires to kind of engage with you in this really lovely way. However, if there's not a 0 for that, that can also become pushy. They're here and then they're here, or they're here, or they step to, what if they get spooked and they're here and they kind of explode out of your arms, or you go to scratch your nose and they don't know what that means and they panic. So having the 0 be there and having the beginning gestures be very clean and be simple. Let's make sure we understand how to work with this bubble before we get inside each other's bubbles and possibly get into a position where either of us could get scared or injured. Finding 0 is essential, and some of the signs for the horse include a lowered head, a relaxed facial expression, and deep breathing. So when we model that for them, it is not, I'm not trying in these pictures to be submissive. I'm not bowing to the horse. Someone said, are you bowing to the horse? I'm not bowing to I'm dropping my head to signal to the horse, you too. So I want to feel relaxed, big breath, let that stress go. I'm letting my shoulders go, and you too. And when horses see you dropping down into a relaxed posture, they look, then they say, good idea. Most of the time, they're going to mirror you. And this is where mirroring starts to switch and is really fun. Another way that horses use their bubble is the lineup position, and that's at the girth line. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the girth button, even when they're in motion, is a way for them, and this is, I call this being in the pie. Okay, so it's a way for them to stay in relation to each other, side by side, even at speed. So if they were all of a sudden to turn to the right, they can do that because the orientation is through a major pivot point. All right, and also when they're babies, they are taught by their mothers to keep their eye on it. So it's the first thing that babies focus on, is keeping their face in alignment with mom's girth. That way, if she changes direction, speeds up, slows down, the baby can stay right with her. Okay, it's a focal point. So as they grow up, they keep their eye on it, but now they can also line up their girths in the same spot because they're the same size. So for instance, here we have these horses are in alignment with each other's girths, okay? They're also mirroring each other, and so this is how mirroring and the girth button can line up and become connected. And it's a really wonderful experience. So when horses are feeling very comfortable and kind of pair bonded with each other, you'll see a lot more of this. So when we're interacting with the girth button, we need to remember that it's a very significant button for them because it represents being in harmony, being lined up. So mentally, emotionally, and physically, I'm lined up. I'm with you. We are with each other, okay? It's very significant. And it really just comes down to togetherness. So it's such a primal button. It's of all the Horsepeak buttons, this one button says a lot of things. And of course, when we ride a horse, we're using that button. We're putting our feet right there. So that's something to consider. When horses are in play, even big play, like these guys are running, kind of wrestling, rolling, there's still a way that they can orient around that girth button because it means I'm with you. Hey, we're playing, and they'll change position, but they also are going to spend a lot of time with that girth in relation to another horse's girth if they're with each other. Because right in the middle of play, if a mountain lion showed up, they'd be like, and they'd run off together and it would be in harmony. When horses are rivals, they are not with each other. And so the girth buttons are not in alignment with each other. And in fact, some horses will even try to knock another horse over at the girth button because if they are both in a rearing position, they're vulnerable at the girth line. That's such a powerful pivot point that if you knock them there, you can really just knock your rival over. When we think about moving a horse around us, like in the lunge or even in a round pen, what you're thinking about is that if you're focused on the girth button and you have your body parts lined up so that your core is aiming at the girth, then the horse can make a more comfortable arc around you, okay? And if you are stressing the horse while you're at the girth button, then you're looking more like the rivals look to each other. I'm not saying that you are being a rival to the horse, but it could be perceived that way by them because their girth button is a very sensitive place for herd connectedness. In these pictures, I'm just demonstrating connection through the girth button with me. And in the top one, I've lined up my ribs towards the horse's ribs, and I'm doing a little thing and she's doing a little thing, and we're sort of circling each other, which is fun. In the picture with the white horse, I'm just initiating contact there. This is an activation. It's a pointy, so it's an activation. I'm saying, could you move up and over a little bit from here? Her ears are relaxed, her face is relaxed, her head is low. The answer is, sure, I'll do that because she's with me. She's not defensive against me, okay? And the lower picture, the chestnut, is I'm inviting her to move around me, so I'm aiming my core at her girth, and she's making that arc to make a circle and go all the way around me. And she doesn't have to do that. She's doing it because we're with each other. And so that's what's really important about thinking, how are you connecting with your horse's girth? And if you go to touch the girth with a palm, which is connection, and they shiver or quiver all over, then they're not feeling with you, at least in that moment. So something to really consider. How can I maybe make this a more comfortable connection with my horse? We're going to talk about spiraling in, and I'm going to say this again and again. It's really important when you're beginning horse speak to stay on the other side of a barrier, even if you know your horse. And if you don't have a barrier, some people say, I don't really have one. I just have a big field and my horse is in it. And so I say, well, put a cone out, or go stand with a log between the two of you, or a barrel or something that just works as a natural barrier. And the only reason is because as you start to communicate with your horse, doing some of these basic gestures, two things can happen. You can get excited that stuff is happening, and you can merge your bubbles too quick. So you're like, oh, this is great, ah! And you sort of reach across into the bubble. So if there's a natural barrier, you're less likely to do it, and anyway, you can't do it. The other side is you can keep a better zero, because if something happens and you're not sure what that means or what to do with it, you can just step back, because there's a natural barrier there that can keep you and the horse from blundering. If the horse is excitable, there's a natural barrier so they can learn to practice their zero. So it serves a lot of purposes. And because this horse speak is a visual language, it's based on your body movements, your postures, your gestures, your breath messages, the blinking that you're doing, the expression on your face, okay? All these things. It doesn't matter if you're right there with the horse or 50 feet away. It literally does not matter. If you've focused your intention on the horse and you're saying, you know, I am with you, I'm just going to be watching you wherever you go, and you start to greet from afar, you breathe at them as you're greeting from afar. You do a little go away face in the air. You back up 3 steps, you turn to the side, right? Then you do a go away face in the air at them. Leave it there for a minute, see if they respond. You do a hold hand. You can do all of these things from a big distance, and you can start to watch for responses. Now, it might take a full minute. I'm not joking. It might take a full minute for them to process and think, what is he trying to say? What does she mean by that? But you'll see something. There'll be like a tail flick, and then it flows through the body, and head nods a little bit, and then maybe they take a step and they kind of look at you quizzically. Or maybe they turn around and at least face you. Maybe they're eating grass, but they're facing you now. And they're looking at you, okay? So this is wonderful to know, because you don't even have to be there. You can be really far away and still have a full conversation with a horse. And I've done it, and I've coached my students to do it, and people who've never even done this before have done it within, 5-10 minutes of learning it and have it work. So this is fun and easy. And most of all, you have to stay respectful of the 2 bubbles at this stage so that you can really, really be effective at higher levels of communication. One of the tricks that we use in a clinic is called reverse round pen. And this later has other applications as well. But for this, we have our hands in hold posture, and we're walking around the herd, and we're there, so we're actually in the pen with the horses. If this didn't feel safe, if you have horses who are too high energy, do it from the outside of the pen. That's totally fine. But you just walk up and down with your hands here, and you're just holding your position. When we're doing it, we're leading the people, maybe even serpentining through some horses or around the outside of the herd. And what we're doing is practicing moving in harmony together. If I take people out into a big wide open area with a bunch of horses, human beings don't tend to automatically orient their bubbles of personal space in relation and connection to horses' bubbles. And so people just kind of wander off. And there's been several situations where I look and, all of a sudden people have kind of established themselves in different places, and the horses, 4 or 5 horses, and they're like, it's a lot of people all around. And before you know it, I've had horses make a bigger circle around the people, all facing either inward or sideways, but they've made a decision and they've all made a big circle for the people to exist within, or even to exist side by side. So it's just amazing that they're like, you guys don't really know how to line up, but we do, so we'll help you out. So by walking in and doing reverse round pen, it says, horse, you don't need to move. I'm going to try to get all the way around you, or all the way around this fence line, and not disturb you. Okay? That's showing that I understand the bubble. And it's really key to be able to do this and understand the bubble. Because if you don't understand where it is and how you're interacting with it and how the horse is perceiving it, it's limiting when you get into deeper, bigger, more interesting conversations. So just to kind of tally it up, and the first picture up on the left, there's a greeting, which happens to include me. It was very sweet. The horses wanted to include me in their greeting. And then afterwards, they go into a sandwich position, with one horse in the hold position at the back of the horse in front. They then move into the connection at the girth position. They're in the pie together with each other. And then they go into a hold position and they're facing back to front. And so that's a mutually protective position because they've got each other's backs. For our review, what is it that horses value the most about their bubbles? All right, we've talked a bit about that. And by now, I hope you're understanding that the bubble of personal space is the thing horses value the most. The food is on the ground. If you put your head down, there's probably something to eat if you're a horse. So they value food, but they don't need food to happen in the way that we need to go get some food. You know, we need to go hunting, we need to go to the grocery store, whatever we need to do, we need to make it happen. Food's on the ground. What they need to have happen is bubbles, all right? If they don't have healthy bubbles of personal space, they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to get injured. They're vulnerable to attack. They're vulnerable to not be in a safe space, okay? So the bubble of personal space is really key for them to feel secure in their world and to feel they can communicate. Why are they so scared? We talked a little bit about where they come from in terms of evolution and what's going on in the back of their mind. And horses today, you know, our domestic horses are not being preyed upon, but that doesn't mean Mother Nature isn't still in there. Bubbles of personal space going deeper. So we're really thinking more about, well, how do they use them? How do they connect? Are they in a sandwich? Are they side by side? Are they in the bubble with each other? Or are they on the outside of the bubble? Are they coming through and greeting? So how are they using these bubbles and the quadrants to be in their conversation? We talked a little bit about approaching them and about greeting them. We just started that conversation. We talked about sandwiching and not only where, why, and how, but also the fact that most horses are looking for someone to be the lead. I know where we're going. Trust me and follow me, and someone to be the protector. Don't worry, you go ahead. I've got your back. I won't let anything hurt you. I'm going to watch out for that boogeyman, and I'm going to, you know, kick that predator if he shows up. And so that posturing is important to them. Protectors, map makers, and sentry, just thinking that we've got to learn how to take on enough of each of those qualities for our horse to say, okay, you're kind of my everything, and I like that, and I want to follow that. Why would a horse not want to be with you if you're fulfilling their basic needs, right? If you're it, they want to be with you. It's that simple. And then the girth button, and realizing this is a really powerful button for a horse. So before we just sort of get in and activate it and use it, you know, think about the fact that this is a key point on the horses' bodies that has a lot of impact, a lot of significance for them. And then spiraling into the bubble. Do as much as you can from a distance, from the other side of a barrier, so that you can be practicing your zero while you're learning the basics of horse speak. And so you can be modeling zero for your horse. Because right now, the most important thing is that you can model that zero energy. And so if you get in there with them and you find yourself going up, then you're not modeling zero anymore. So you're trying to do the greeting ritual, or you're trying to do go away face, but you're not at zero. Okay? So zero is the foundation. So staying on the outside of a barrier, you can still have all these conversations. And if you start to lose zero, you can just step away, get it back, and then come back. And they can too. And it's the beautiful thing about this is that when horses realize that that zero is what you're after, they start to aim for it also. And then, like I said in the beginning, they start to bring it to us. Okay, so your homework. I want you to look for horses that are sandwiching. I want you to see if you can, you know, take a guess at who might be a map maker, who might be a protector or a sentry, or who's a scaredy cat. I want you to try to see the pie chart and the girth buttons lining up. And are the horses fanning in, like in the last picture where they were all eating one pile of hay? They were all nose in, so they were all fanned in. And then sometimes horses will also fan out. Okay, so butts together, noses out. So those are other ways to be connected through the girth. Pictures or draw for a deeper understanding. It's great to snap a lot of pictures that you're not looking for a pretty picture, but you're trying to see what this conversation is. So you can do a little bit of breakdown later and say, oh, but yeah, this went there and that went there. Approaching your horse with confidence and awareness. So being 0 doesn't mean being wishy-washy. So you're not approaching the horse going, I don't mean to cause you any harm. Don't worry about me at all. Okay, that's not confident. So then that's not 0. That's just creepy. So you want to approach your horse with confidence, which is part of why you are 0. It's like if you walk into a classroom and there's a teacher and they're like, hello, I'm glad you're in my class today, right? You want to leave the classroom. You don't want to learn anything from them. But if you walk into the classroom, they're like, hello, today we're going to open our books and practice blah, 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 blah. Then you feel, oh, good, I'm going to learn something, okay? So it's really calm. It goes with confident. They're connected. Spiraling in from the outside, just again, sometimes the magic is happening. The horse is greeting you. They're breathing at you. Maybe they've even given a little affectionate, mouthing here, and which is a signal like, oh, we could do more. We could get more connected. The eyes look soft and the ears, and they're interested. And wow. So this is why it's important to sort of stay on a barrier also, because if you're lingering too long, if you're handshaking someone, and you're still handshaking and you're still handshaking, at a certain point, they're like, oh my gosh, this person, get away from me, okay? And it's nothing personal. They don't like you. It's just, it went on too long. So if you're greeting a horse or you're making connection, hold hand, and they want to move away, don't take it personal. They're just like, okay, I got the message. We move on to the next thing. So that's part of why staying on the outside is also important, because if either you or the horse become frustrated or irritated for any reason, just break it up, take a break, and come back. Okay, so it's really a great way to have this ability to maintain your 0 and for the horse to maintain their 0. I've seen a lot of horses get overwhelmed or confused. I'm greeting them and I'm offering them some deeper conversations, and they're like, I really need to think about that. And they actually have to walk away and kind of go over there and think. And then they circle back around, they come back, they go, you know what I think about that? And they go into a different conversation with me. So being able to give your horse space to process is also important as giving yourself space to process. So please try to enjoy your homework this week and go ahead and send us little updates on what's happening for you. And we'll go ahead and take a few questions if anyone would like to ask anything.
Okay, let's do this. So if you see, you can raise your hand at the lower part of your screen, or you can go into the question and answer or into the chat. So here's one.
I've been practicing the greeting, and sometimes I get 1 or 2 touches, but not always 3. Was I being too slow, or did I miss a breath instead of a touch? Is there always 3 touches? So that's a very good question. What you could do is do 3 breaths with your first touch. And the greeting ritual, the official greeting ritual, is like the first contact of the day, or when you haven't seen the horse in a little while. Some of my horses in my herd want to do an official 3, 1, 2, 3 touch when they see me first time of the day. Some horses barely want to do a check-in. So I'm like, good morning. They're like, yeah, I know you. I don't need to do this with you. So it's really a personal thing. And what I would say, if you're not getting the 3rd touch from a horse, do they leave and look insecure or not ready, or, and something seems a little funny, or are they looking satisfied? If they're like, when they're doing a little go away face, perhaps they combined 2. So they might have touched and breathed. So in their minds, they're like, well, I did them all. Or they might have touched even the first one, they went. So look for the nostril flare. And if you're not sure, you can put your knuckle in and go, and that's all 3. So you put your knuckle in, but you did 3 breaths. And unfortunately, there's some nuances to the greeting ritual. But if you say to the horse, hey, I'd like to have another check-in, and that last check-in is really soft, then you've achieved it. Okay. And if you haven't, don't worry about it. There's one of my horses had some mouth problems, and he actually doesn't like to touch my knuckle at all. He's too sensitive. So really just aim for the breath. If you're approaching and the horse suddenly gets startled and runs away, is this because I'm not at zero? How do I respond to that? Okay, so if you're approaching your horse and I'm assuming they're loose and they startle and run away, then probably they had a bigger bubble than you were ready to perceive. If horses startle easily, they usually have a bigger bubble. They feel more invaded sooner. Some horses have a very small bubble, so you get all the way up to them before they like, hey. So what you can do in that situation is put up your hold hand, then turn to the side anytime you see a flinch. So if they're looking at you, you can breathe at them. So say greeting breath, okay? I'd like to come over and have your hold hand up. Don't worry about me. And then watch them. So if you see them do that, they might be saying, because the head is moving, there's a backwards motion, saying, ooh, it's getting a little close. And then you say, oh, I saw it. And you can stay still, turn your head to the side, say, don't worry, pressure's off. Or you can even back up a few steps. So that's what I would practice, is just kind of put your hand up and try to feel the bubbles. So you're not pushing the horse away, but you're saying, let me see if I can feel that. And if the horse is too sensitive to your palms up, you can place your palms down. So you can just walk with your palms kind of here, and that's the same signal. So I would just really, really, really watch flinching before running, because there's always flinching before there's running, okay? And I've been practicing the greeting ritual with other horses than the one I've worked most with. My mare seemed surprised when I started, then she did the touch 2 times, had soft eyes, then the third one, she got annoyed, nostrils wrinkled, hard eye, and nipped me, and then settled back down. I was surprised. Could you advise? So on the third touch, the horse got a little bit like, is this for real? Okay, and then she got even a little nippy. So she gave the third touch, and what she also gave with it was a signal that says, I'm letting you in, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel compelled to let you in, because the third touch means you're in, okay? I feel compelled to let you in, but I also feel compelled to let you, I'm very sensitive, and I don't want you just to bark, just because I've said yes. So it's like, we're gonna talk more about red light, green light, and yellow light, okay? So the horse gave a green light, which is a yes, but there's a little bit of yellow light in there, but, yes, but, as opposed to a yellow light going towards red, which is not really and no. Okay, so you just have to kind of feel where you are on the scale of green light and red light. So are you getting a message that says, yes, but, when that's what this message would be. It's like, oh, I'm letting you in, but I'm tense, I'm nervous. If you really want to know what's going on inside this bubble, I got some issues going on, okay? Usually that's what's going on. So for that kind of horse, a go-away face, I'm going to step to the side and use my finger. I'm not going to try to actually touch that horse's face. She already said I'm really sensitive, and I feel very cautious about
and really step to the side. Don't stand right in front of the horse.
Do not stand in front of the horse.
To the side.
And try to go
around. Take a couple steps to the either side. Whatever knuckle. If you use this is my right hand. Take a few steps over to the right.
If you use your left hand, take some steps to the left.
Yeah. Don't try to reach around.
Don't reach around. So if I come here and I just say go away face, if the horse is too snappy and nappy at that point, I'm just going to stand here like this. Mm-hmm. And you just wait a moment, just give them a moment, and they will go, do you mean this? And I say, yep, that's what I mean. Okay, so then you start building a positive connection, because if a horse is compelled to give you the third greet, they're like, I feel like I have to be polite and do this, but I don't know how ready I really am. Okay, so
it's like they want to go deeper in the relationship to define that third touch, but then they're like, wait a minute.
So they want to connect, but they want to make sure that respect is there. Mm-hmm. So you can also, if a horse feels like they're going to be nippy, you don't have to touch their muzzle. You can just do it from a distance and blow. I've done this with horses that are really nippy. I'll just be across the aisle. 1 and 2 and 3. Nice to know you. And they've done all 3 from the other side of the aisle, but they're like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, and that's fine. I'm just going to walk away, rinse and repeat, do it again a few times until they start to go, okay, I think you don't mean any harm by this. Okay, and it's a great way to start rebuilding rapport with horses that, are really troubled and they're having a hard time. So why are some horses more scared and skeptical than others? Is it just how they're individually wired, much as people are wired differently? I think it's both. Some horses are more scared and skeptical, yes, because of just how they're wired, the breeding and their bloodlines and what kind of horse is it, but also can be their life experiences. So if they had really confidence building life experiences along the way, it may have enhanced some of that in a horse of the same breed. And that horse of the same breed or temperament is a little bit more confident. And a horse who has not had as many confidence building experiences may have surfaced more of their skepticism. And even if I have a horse who seems really naturally a skeptic or a critic or something like that, there's still, what I've discovered is that understanding the platform of HorseSpeak is my workaround. So I can say, yeah, I know, yeah, you've got troubles, or yeah, you're really strong, whatever's going on for the horse. But I can say, but I'm going to model 0, and I'm going to model being a calm authority that's here to make sure everything goes well. And I'm not going to barge into your bubble, and I'm not going to ask you to barge into my bubble until we're both ready. And so even if the horse is skeptical or crabby or whatever's going on, I've still had tremendous success building rapport. So we're going to get into all of those nuances as the webinar goes on.
All right. Let's see. Looks like we've cleared everything up. Does anyone else have anything to add this evening?
Okay.
Oh, you're welcome.
Sharon's
Sharon's really good. Awesome answer. It's like, my mare. Sharon is very good at being able to just do this like kung fu horse speak, being able to know exactly what's going on for you. So you come to the right place to be able to learn all about what your horse is doing inside and out. It's really great.
And I want to add before we close that there's a lot of training methods that have come up through the years to specifically try to address horses that are grumpy or really intense or really insecure, the ones that are difficult. And that, people have really tried for a long time to come up with, like, how are we going to deal with, nobody wants to spend their day defensive against their horse, right? And so at first, when you're learning horse speak, it can feel like, oh, am I even going to get anywhere with this? And what I can say is that once you have the basic precepts, and there's just a few basic precepts, and they are a little bit out of the box, but once you've got them, this is so natural. And I've literally, at this point, done this with hundreds of horses from every walk of life, stallions and feral horses and Mustangs and big and little and yada yada and abused and all kinds of things. And this is the best way I've found to build rapport, connect, respect in 5 minutes. And so, yes, it takes the human a little bit of time to understand how to pull this together. Like if you're going to learn sign language class or a different language, it would take some time to figure out how to pull it together. But once you've got it, right? And it's truly amazing. So this is also why I put a caution in there, and I'm like, please, when you're trying to do horse speak, have a barrier so that you can stay 0, because the 0 is right now the most important platform. And it's not, you're not collapsing, you're not,
they're not winning or anything.
You're not trying to like give, I'm so sorry, I don't want to disturb you. And you're not like letting them win. Like Laura said, it's not any of that. You're just saying, I'm here, I'm in control. And as the one in control, I'm desiring us to have a low calorie conversation. And if you come with that approach a couple of times in a row, the horses start to go, that's a good idea. I've yet to meet a horse that said that's a bad idea. Okay. Maybe someday I will, but so far it hasn't happened. So
it's an understanding in layers. I just got a response from a gal who is on round 2 of taking this webinar series, and she's like, wow, I thought I actually understood if my horses are at 0, and now I'm taking this webinar, and a couple of the slides are a little bit different, and Sharon's she's not a machine, she's not saying the same exact stuff from the last time, and she's like, wow, my horses really aren't 0, and I can really see these different little places where I can help them find their 0. And so it's just been really cool journey for this gal to be able to really go deeper. And she's like, horse speak is addicting. That was the final line.
That it is. I'm pretty addicted to it as well. So I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And we're going to keep going, deeper into this stuff. And it's so cool. And I'm really glad that you chose to come on the journey. So we'll see you next time.
Cheers, folks. Thanks so much.